Suffering is inevitable to humanity. You see it all the time through yourself, others, the media, world. It encompasses everything, and yet it never seems to go away. Most of us avoid activities and choices that would put us through suffering. But what if you actively chose to keep suffering? For what reason would you do so? Perhaps to protect someone? To enact revenge? Maybe you don't even know. Fire Punch is a manga that was created by now well-recognized Tatsuki Fujimoto. It was the first fully published manga series after many one-shots were produced. The story follows a world in which most of humanity is dead, and those who are alive are left to live in an ice age. A small percentage of humanity has superpowers, or blessings as they are referred to. Most of the remaining population formed into a governmental-type regime in a city known as Behemdorg, and ransacked and captured anyone needed to continue their power. A boy and his sister, named Agni and Luna respectively, each have the power of human regeneration, and sacrifice their body parts to feed their village. However, soon enough, Behemdorg would find the village, and a blessed with the power of constant fire burns the village and its people. Agni is the only survivor, as his sister's regeneration isn't as quick as his. Left in a body of constant fire and torment, unable to die nor completely heal, Agni vows to kill the man with his own flame. Now, I know I dropped a lot onto with that summary, but believe me when I say that was probably the shortest synopsis I could possibly give you. Fire Punch is a convoluted and complicated story, and those who have read it know just how confusing this manga gets. While it truly gets wild towards the end of the series, the first half is fairly straightforward, so let's start there. Looking at Agni's character towards the start of Chapter 1, we see he is persistent in his beliefs and actions. He loves his sister a lot, maybe too much later on, and refuses to have her give up her arm to feed the village. As the older brother, he feels a responsibility has been placed on him to protect her and keep her in check as well, if she ever gets a bit out of control with her actions or ideas. Jumping ahead a bit, we get a flashback of a time when Agni and his sister Luna are being held hostage by some soldiers. As one of them attempts to violate Luna, Agni, using just his arms, breaks and twists his bones to escape the shackles he's bound to, and without hesitation, kills the man. He even dreads having to chop off Luna's arms even once to free her from her binds. Agni cares a lot for his sister and would do anything if it meant protecting her and seeing her smile. So, what makes him stand out? You may be thinking, that's plenty of characters. In many pieces of fiction, we have an almost dangerous sense of selflessness and drive to protect a loved one. I mean, it's basically a trope at this point. But you see, Agni is different, and it all changed when he was set ablaze. When Agni and his village were set to scorch, everything changed. Fujimoto does an incredible job of displaying tension and build-up using the manga formatting. We get a panel of a soldier claiming this village never existed, and the flame soldier Doma calmly and casually explains his blessing to Agni and the readers. The final black panel before the page turn leaves us with a heavy amount of anxiety and dread. We know that this village did exist. Of course, it's where the setting of our story has taken place so far. To see these soldiers ever so nonchalantly pack up their gear, knowing full well, in a few moments, what will happen while we don't, is just awful. And what we get with our page turn is daunting. A screaming boy in agony with his sister clutching for life. In these moments, Agni, while in tremendous pain, feels a calmness in death. At just 15 years of age, which in itself is horrifying. Yet, this calmness would never succeed, as the final words Agni hears from his charred sister: live. These words, as we readers would find out, are what define Agni. Remember how I said Agni would do anything for his sister? How many characters do this trope already? Well, this is where Agni is different. Instead of choosing the quickness of death, the ending of pain, and the reunion of his family, Agni chooses to live and live by these cursed words. A word that would soon curse his own existence. Agni is unlike other characters from the very start, a boy who chooses to continuously live in pain and wrath instead of a warm embrace of death, all because of a single word uttered by his sister: live. This word would instill Agni with a fluster of emotions throughout the story, as it won't be the only time he hears this. As much as he wanted to die and to be with his family in death, he chose to live because his sister said so. Maybe in Agni's mind, it was the only way he could protect her, or at least help her in her final moments. Agni would suffer in flames for 8 years, all while carrying the promise to himself to kill Doma, the man who set him aflame, so he can then rest and die. We even see Agni be joyous in the occasion of killing Doma, and not necessarily because he's fueled by hatred and malice, but a desire to finally die and end his constant, unimaginable pain. I mean, name another main character whose drive and motivation for the plot is simply to die. Well, maybe you can think of one, but the point is, this series just started and it's extremely depressing. It's not depressing in a way where people suffer from a mental illness and suffer alone or a slow burn drama. It's more of a hidden one. Think about it. On the outside, Fire Punch is a shonen series after all, said to be about a man who uses his Fire Punch ability to take down the enemies in his ways and save the slaves of the big evil regime. Yet, in reality, it's much more than that. Firstly, I believe Fujimoto having the setting be an ice age was a deliberate and intentional choice. The very nature of a barren frozen wasteland gives off a cold, nihilistic, and depressing tone. We get many panels of just one or two characters walking through snowy fields, or a double-page spread even of the landscape itself. And of course, the horrific irony of Agni being forever burnt and in flames as he and his sister fought to live on a cold and frozen earth. The emptiness and near extinct population of the human race only adds to the depressing nature of Fire Punch. Fire Punch isn't depressing like other stories, it's a literal cold and isolated one, where the character's drive to move forward is only promised with their death. And Agni isn't the only character who has this same drive. Togata and Judah, both for the duration of the manga, or at least some of it, seek a desire in death. For Togata, it's boredom, and for Judah, well, she sees no reason to live once her people are killed by Agni's flames. Both these characters are pivotal in Agni's development, and yet both would only further put Agni down a dark descent of his broken mind. When Judah asks for death, she's aware Agni sees her as a sister. At this point, Agni knows she isn't, but so badly wants to believe it. Judah knows it and confronts him about it, but after more discussion and an insight into Agni's mind, he can't help but call to his sister, for a single touch from her hand is enough to put Agni at ease for just a moment, resulting in Judah catching a flame. As much as Agni fought for his sister's last words, he let out his true thoughts on the matter as she touched him. Judah doesn't die though, as the Ice Witch saves her at the last moment. But regardless, Agni's very matter of life almost killed someone who he believed was close to him, or at least wanted to. Togata plays a big role in Agni's life, serving as a mentor to him. Not a mentor in terms of getting stronger or teaching life lessons, but guiding him on how to present himself as a god to the struggling slaves of Behemdor. She teaches him how to lie, what to say, and who to kill. Not a very honorable or good mentor, but still one regardless. Throughout Fire Punch, Agni never had anyone close to him. The only one he had was Luna, and since then, he pushed people away due to a fear of hurting them, as well as poor development in social skills. And of course, Agni tried pushing away Togata, but she persisted and eventually accepted she wasn't budging. While Agni and Togata had their differences, they still had a mutual understanding of one another, and each fed off of each other's promises. Togata promised Agni he'd get to kill Doma, as long as Agni promised to let Togata film everything for her movie. Both of these promises were held up, as Agni did kill Doma. However, it didn't bring him the joy and satisfaction he was looking for. Instead, he allowed his hatred and delusions to acquire him, and decimated an entire village for everyone to see. And at the climax of Agni and Togata's conversation, the ice breaks beneath them. Up to this point, these two characters haven't necessarily liked each other. Like I said, it's been more of an understanding and agreement. But here, Agni isn't scolded or ridiculed for his actions. He's giving something much more powerful and long-lasting to his character. A hug. And the same fabled words, to live. Once again, these damned words wouldn't leave Agni, and yet everyone who says it around him dies. It may seem like Agni is the hero of the story. Fujimoto tries to make it obvious by deliberately having the panel of Agni saying he is. It would also seem that an obvious villain would be Doma, the one who killed Agni's family and sister and set him aflame. It's the perfect setup for a hero story. And the story knows this. That's the entire reason for Togata's plot in the manga. She takes the place of the reader, as she sees everything around the world as perfect for a movie. Just as we readers see the same. Nothing that happens in the world has any real consequence for her. She would willingly blow up a hospital if it meant driving her story forward. It's as if she's not a part of the real world, just this make-believe story she's trying to set up. But this isn't a story to these characters. This is their real life, with real loss and real pain. Agni wasn't set aflame to be part of some movie. He didn't watch his sister die for some plot. Yet that's how Togata saw it. Through all of this, it would seem that this was the setup for Fire Punch. And the first half of the manga follows that formula. The second half, not so much. Speaking of, let's talk about who the real villain of this story is. Agni. The second half of the manga gives us a better look into Agni's more demented side. Once he loses his flames and regeneration, you would think this would finally lift his spirits. But that's not what happens. After Agni allows his delusions of Luna to convince him to kill Doma, he's confronted by Togata. As stated earlier, he tries to explain his actions and how he truly is the villain of the story she created, along with his own life. After falling to the ice water below him, he's at a theater that Togata always talked about. Sitting in an open chair next to her is Luna. But Agni's thrown back by Togata instead. It's simply not his time to die yet. And so, Togata takes his place at the theater, keeping Agni from dying. Furthermore, Agni would lose his powers due to the tree created through Judah. Judah would lose her memory through this as well. Utterly confused, Agni would seek out his sister in Judah. With her mind gone, she would willingly become Luna without hesitation. And for Agni, that was enough he needed to convince himself. It's not hard to see that Agni's mental state is broken beyond repair, to put it lightly. He's fallen so far into delusion that he's happy believing his sister is with him. However, if you were Agni, and you kept seeing coincidental sign after coincidental sign that your sister was alive, it may start to drive you a bit crazy too. As if the very world itself was laughing at your misery. Agni further falls into his downward spiral, inflicting self-harm on himself to regulate the flames he had for years, as he can't live without it, while also killing groups of soldiers without a single memory or reason behind it. Agni would embrace his true evil when donning his Fire Punch persona, becoming the villain finally, and killing the boy he once saved so early on, without a single moral thought behind those flames. And with all that, it would seem the story is over. The protagonist of the story let his anger and dark side take over him, and all was lost. Except, that's not exactly how the story ends. There is a bit of a happy ending here. Judah regains her memory as the real Judah, and no longer Luna, and chooses to finally free Agni from his torment. She blows half his face off, resulting in a newly regenerated Agni emerging, free from past memory, completely anemic. At the end of the manga, Agni, who now goes by the name Sun, watches the film recover from the old world. In an empty theater, he watches his past self as Fire Punch, and while he doesn't remember his previous life, he feels a bit of a connection. Finally, as the millennia pass, Agni would follow Judah into outer space, where the two, who have no idea who the other is, would still stay close to one another for the rest of eternity. So, wow, yeah, if you're still confused about what the fuck just happened, don't worry, you're not alone. When I first read Fire Punch, I was in total shock at what happened. This is the most original story of all time without a doubt. There is no other manga quite like Fire Punch. This story teaches you about depression, the vicious spiral into self-loathe and hatred, and what can become of us when we let our most evil desires come to fruition. You may hate yourself or simply want to die. You may want to project that onto everyone around you, but there will always be someone out there for you who will love you no matter what, who will see the good in your heart, even if you don't.